The knock was soft, almost polite, but it shattered the quiet of the house like a gunshot. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was late, way too late for visitors. I thought maybe it was a delivery mistake or some drunk neighbor, but when I opened the door, he was just there. A man I'd never seen in my life stood on my porch, hands in his pockets, looking like he owned the night. No explanation, no smile, just a calm stare that made my skin crawl. Behind him, his car was still running, headlights casting sharp beams onto our lawn. "Is Marin ready?" he asked. His voice was low, steady, like this wasn't weird at all. My brain froze. Marin, my wife. He said her name like they knew each other well. Too well. I stammered. "Excuse me? Who are you?" He tilted his head slightly, almost amused. "Just tell her I'm here. She knows." Before I could respond, I heard footsteps behind me. Marin's footsteps. She walked past me without a word, her face unreadable. She didn't even look at me. She just smiled at him. "Wait, what's going on?" I blurted out. My voice cracked like I was a kid again. She paused only long enough to say, "Don't wait up. I won't be back until morning." I swear my heart stopped for a second. "Morning? Are you out of your mind? Who is this guy?" My voice rose, desperation bubbling up. She didn't answer. She just walked to the car like it was the most natural thing in the world. He opened the door for her, like a scene from a movie I didn't want to watch. I wanted to yell, to grab her hand, to demand answers, but I just stood there like some pathetic bystander in my own life. The car door shut with a dull thud, and then the SUV rolled away into the dark. The silence afterward was unbearable. I just stood at the doorway, staring at the empty street, wondering if I'd just watched my marriage crumble in real time. And the worst part? I didn't even have the courage to chase after her. The silence in the house that night was almost unbearable. It wasn't the normal kind of quiet you get when someone leaves the room. No, this was different. It felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for me to do something, anything. I must have walked around the living room 10 times, my hands twitching like I was supposed to grab onto something solid, something real, but there was nothing. Every corner of the house felt hollow, like the moment Marin stepped out, she took all the air with her. I sat on the couch, staring at the clock as if it could give me answers. 9:48 p.m. The numbers glowed like a warning. She had left with a stranger, and I didn't even have the guts to stop her. My mind kept replaying the scene. The way she didn't look back at me, how effortlessly she walked toward him like it was rehearsed. Was this the first time? Or had she been leaving through that same door while I was too blind to see? I tried calling her. Once. Twice. Straight to voicemail. I typed a message, something pathetic like, "Are you okay?" and hovered over the send button. But what good would it do? If she was with him, she wasn't thinking about me, and if she was, God, I don't even want to think about what they were doing. I deleted the message, ashamed of myself. Then came the thoughts, the kind that crawl into your head when you're alone and won't let go. What if he's someone from her past? What if she's been talking to him for months while I was clueless, fixing the leaky sink or planning weekend dinners? I walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stared at the shelves. It was stupid, but seeing the leftovers from the dinner I made for us, still untouched, hit me harder than I expected. She hadn't even planned on being here. She'd known. I couldn't sit still. I started looking for signs. Her phone charger was gone from the nightstand. Her favorite necklace was missing. I even noticed she'd taken that old leather bag she usually only used for overnight trips. That realization hit me like a cold wave. Overnight. She wasn't just stepping out for air. She'd planned to be gone all night, and she didn't care if I knew. That's when something snapped in me. I went to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty spot where she usually slept. I thought about calling one of my friends to talk, but what would I even say? "Hey, my wife just walked out with another guy," and I stood there like an idiot. No, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just sat there in that awful stillness, my thoughts spiraling darker and darker, until a new idea popped into my head, something I hadn't considered before. What if I followed them next time? What if I finally found out the truth, no matter how much it hurt? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image, Marin stepping into that car like I didn't exist. By the time the first weak light of morning crept through the blinds, I felt like my body was running on anger instead of blood. I was done sitting there like a fool. If she wasn't going to give me answers, I'd find them myself. I started with the obvious, her phone. I'd never been the type to snoop, but that morning, My hands were shaking as I searched the bedroom for any trace of it. She always left it charging on the nightstand, but not last night. It was gone. Then I remembered her old laptop. She barely used it anymore, but I knew her email and social media accounts were synced there. It took me 15 minutes of pacing and arguing with myself before I turned it on. What I found wasn't what I expected. No incriminating messages or emails. Nothing that screamed affair. It was worse. There was an entire email thread with no names, just a strange code in the subject lines. Dates, places, initials. At first, I thought it was spam, but when I clicked one open, my breath caught. The message was simple. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Same place. Bring the necklace. Don't let him find out. The necklace. My mind shot back to last night when I noticed her favorite necklace was missing. I felt like the room tilted for a second, like my stomach had dropped into the floor. Was this about the man from last night? Was he same place? Who even writes something like that unless they're hiding something big? I didn't know what to do with this information, so I just sat there staring at the screen, reading the words over and over. Don't let him find out. Him. Me. I was the idiot she was keeping in the dark. My first instinct was to confront her the second she walked through the door, but the coward in me hesitated. What if I misread it? What if I accused her and was wrong? So instead, I just waited. The hours dragged by until I heard the car pull into the driveway. I watched from the window like some deranged spy as she got out. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look anything. When she came inside, she smiled faintly, as if nothing had happened. I couldn't take it. Where were you last night? I asked. My voice cracked. She paused for just a second before answering. I told you. I needed time. Don't start this. Don't start this. I laughed bitterly. You walk out with some guy I don't even know, and you think I'm just going to sit here and pretend it's fine? She sighed, set her bag down, and said something that still chills me. Eli, you don't want to know the truth. I felt my chest tighten. Try me. But she didn't say anything else. She just walked upstairs, leaving me standing there, feeling like the floor had opened beneath me. That night, when she fell asleep, I swore to myself I'd follow her next time. I didn't care if it destroyed me. I needed the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I don't know what possessed me that next evening, but by the time the clock hit 8:30 p.m., my entire body felt like it was humming with electricity. Maren was in the bathroom, getting ready, just like she had the night before. She thought I wasn't paying attention, but I noticed every detail. The subtle perfume, the careful way she applied lipstick she never wore for me, and the deliberate silence between us, like we were strangers in our own home. I wanted to scream at her, demand answers, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to know exactly what was going on, and the only way to do that was to follow her. When she finally left the house, I waited exactly 2 minutes before grabbing my keys and slipping out the door. I parked my car a block away from the house earlier, just so she wouldn't suspect a thing. I watched as she got into that same dark SUV with the man from last night. I felt my stomach twist into knots, but I started the engine and followed them, keeping a safe distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they were shaking. They drove for nearly half an hour, out of our small neighborhood and into a part of town I didn't recognize. It wasn't some fancy hotel or bar like I'd been expecting. No, it was worse because it didn't make any sense. They stopped at an old, abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. The place looked like something out of a crime scene. Rusted metal doors, shattered windows, and weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement. The SUV parked near a side entrance, and I watched as they both got out. He opened the door for her again, and she followed him inside without even looking back. I sat there for a few seconds, my mind racing. What was going on inside that building? Why would she come here of all places? Was it some kind of secret meeting spot? My heart was pounding so hard I felt sick, but I couldn't just sit there. I needed to know. So I got out of my car, quietly crossed the cracked pavement, and found a side window where I could peek inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't what I thought. Inside, there was a group of people, maybe 10 or 12 of them, standing in a loose circle around some long wooden table. On the table, I could see a pile of what looked like old photographs, stacks of cash, and something shiny I couldn't make out. Maren was standing there, looking nervous, while the man in the leather jacket, him, spoke to the group like he was in charge. I couldn't hear much from where I was, but I caught a few words. Something about the list, making sure no one talks, and the delivery. It didn't sound like cheating. It sounded dangerous. My breath caught in my throat when I saw Marin hand him her necklace, the one I'd noticed missing, and he placed it on the table next to the cash, almost like it was part of some twisted trade. I stumbled back from the window, my mind spinning. What was this? Some kind of black market deal? Was Marin in trouble? Was I? Suddenly, I realized I couldn't just barge in there. I needed to think. I needed to find out who this man really was and what my wife had gotten herself into. That night, I drove home in silence, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The image of that strange meeting burned into my mind. I knew this was bigger than I thought. And I knew one thing for sure. Whatever Marin was involved in, I was already too deep to walk away. The drive back home was a blur. The steering wheel felt slick in my palms, not from sweat, but from the crushing realization that I was no longer just a husband dealing with a potential affair. I was now tangled up in something I didn't understand. My thoughts wouldn't stop spiraling. Who was that man? What was the list they were talking about? And why did Marin hand over her necklace like it was some kind of payment? The image of that dimly lit warehouse, with all those people standing in silence, kept replaying in my head like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I barely slept, just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Marin breathing next to me when she finally came home. She slipped into bed at 2 a.m., thinking I was asleep. I almost confronted her right there, almost demanded answers, but something in me said to wait. I needed proof. I needed to understand before I spoke, because whatever she was caught up in, it wasn't something simple. The next morning, I played my role like nothing had happened. I made coffee, asked her about work, pretended I wasn't falling apart inside. But when she left for the day, I got to work. I started with his car. The SUV was distinct, black, slightly dented on the side, with a strange sticker on the back window that looked like an old military emblem. I couldn't stop thinking about that sticker. It felt like a clue, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove back to that warehouse in daylight, hoping to find the car. The place looked even worse in the sun, all rusted metal and graffiti. But the SUV was gone. Still, I walked around the perimeter, taking pictures with my phone like some wannabe detective. That's when I saw the first real sign of danger. On one of the doors, hidden behind some loose boards, was a symbol, 3 overlapping circles with a line through them. It wasn't graffiti. It was deliberate, and it looked familiar, though I couldn't place where I'd seen it before. I left the warehouse feeling like someone was watching me, and that paranoia only got worse when I checked my rearview mirror and saw a dark sedan trailing a few car lengths behind. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but every turn I took, they followed. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think straight. I sped up, weaving through side streets, and finally managed to lose them near a crowded gas station. That's when I knew, whatever Marin was involved in, it wasn't just about her. Now I was on someone's radar too. I parked in a quiet lot and sat there shaking for a few minutes, trying to calm down. That's when I decided I had to know who this man was. I started calling in favors, reaching out to a friend who used to work in private security. I described the man, tall, leather jacket, mid-30s, maybe ex-military, and told him about the SUV with the sticker. My friend went quiet for a moment, then asked me something that sent a chill down my spine. Eli, are you sure you want me to dig into this? If this guy is who I think he is, you might be dealing with something way worse than you can handle. That one sentence kept replaying in my head all day. Worse than I can handle. What does that even mean? When Marin came home that night, I watched her carefully. She looked tired, yes, but not scared. In fact, she looked determined. Like she was carrying a secret weight that she wouldn't let me near. I don't know what's worse, not knowing the truth, or the growing fear that I might already be in danger just by being her husband. I told myself I'd give it one more night, one more chance to follow her and see where this really leads. Because if I'm right, this isn't just about betrayal. It's about survival. The next night, I was ready before she even started getting dressed. I had parked my car a few streets away and packed it with everything I thought I might need: flashlight, camera, even a small recorder I dug out of an old box in the garage. I felt insane doing all of this, but I couldn't stop myself. My heart was pounding with the mix of fear and adrenaline, and a voice in my head kept telling me that whatever I was about to see, it would either destroy me or set me free. Marin left the house at 8:55 p.m., just like the email had said. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Same place. I let her get a good distance before I followed, my headlights off for as long as I could manage. This time, the SUV didn't take the same route. Instead of heading to the warehouse, they drove out past the city limits, down a stretch of road I hadn't been on in years. It was the kind of road where streetlights don't bother to exist, and your own headlights make you feel like you're cutting through a void. After about 20 minutes, they turned off into what looked like an old, private property, gates rusted but wide open, a gravel driveway lined with dead trees. I parked far back, cutting the engine, and continued on foot. Every step I took crunched loudly against the gravel, and I kept pausing, terrified that someone would hear me. The building they went into wasn't a warehouse this time. It was a large, derelict house, 3 stories, boarded windows, the kind of place you'd swear was haunted if you didn't know better. I crept close enough to peer through a broken side window, my breath fogging up the glass. What I saw inside didn't look like a secret date or some underground poker game. It was something else entirely. The same group from the warehouse was there, but now there were even more people, all gathered around a long dining table that looked like it belonged in a gothic horror movie. The table was covered with papers, photographs, and strange metallic objects that glinted under the dim light. And there, standing at the head of the table, was the man in the leather jacket. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was giving orders, his voice sharp, commanding, like a drill sergeant. Marin stood beside him, holding a folder. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, looked like she was part of whatever this was. She handed the folder to a tall man in a gray coat, who flipped through it with a serious expression. I couldn't hear much from where I was hiding, but I caught bits and pieces. The list is almost complete. He doesn't know yet. The final delivery. My heart sank when I realized I might be the he they were talking about. Then something happened that nearly made me drop the recorder. The man in the leather jacket pulled out a photograph from the folder and held it up for everyone to see. Even from a distance, I recognized it. It was me. A photo of me standing in front of our house, taken from a distance. I felt the blood drain from my face. Why would they have a photo of me? What had Marin told them? Was I some kind of target? I crouched there in the dark, shaking, while my entire world shifted in the span of seconds. It wasn't just about her sneaking out anymore. It wasn't about another man. It was about something far darker, something that had my name written all over it. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding so loudly I was afraid they'd hear me. I stumbled over a loose piece of wood, but luckily, the noise was drowned out by the sound of the SUV's engine starting up again. I hid behind a dead tree as they all began to leave, their cars driving off one by one. When I finally made it back to my own car, my hands were trembling so hard I could barely get the keys in the ignition. I drove home in silence, my head spinning with questions. Was Marin protecting me, or was she part of whatever this was? And why, out of all people, was I suddenly in the center of something I didn't even understand? That night, I didn't confront her. I just lay next to her in bed, listening to her breathe, staring at the ceiling while my thoughts screamed. Whatever this was, I needed answers, but I also needed to stay alive long enough to get them. I woke up the next morning with my jaw clenched so tight that my teeth hurt. I'd barely slept an hour, my mind replaying the image of that photograph over and over. It wasn't just the fact that they had a picture of me. It was how deliberate it looked. It wasn't some random snapshot. It felt like surveillance. Someone had been watching me, maybe for weeks, maybe longer. And Marin, she stood there like she belonged with them. Every detail of last night burned into me. Her calm expression, the way she handed over that folder, the strange authority the man in the leather jacket seemed to have. My wife, the woman I shared my life with, was part of something that had me in the crosshairs, and I didn't even know why. I couldn't just sit around anymore. While Marin showered, I quietly went into her bag. I didn't care how low it was. I needed to know what was going on. My hands shook as I searched through her things until I found it. A small keychain with a symbol etched into it. My blood went cold. It was the same 3 overlapping circles I'd seen on the warehouse door. It wasn't a coincidence. My wife was fully tied to these people. I also found a receipt, folded neatly into a side pocket. It was for a gas station 2 towns over, time-stamped from the previous night, with a strange handwritten note on the back. Delivery confirmed. November 23rd. I shoved it all back before she noticed and pretended everything was normal during breakfast. She asked me something casual about work, and I answered like a robot. Every time she looked at me, I wondered how much she knew about what I'd seen. Did she know I'd followed her? Did she know I was now holding on to fragments of her secret life? I felt like I was living with a stranger who wore my wife's face. That day, I called my friend in private security again. I gave him the details of the man, everything I remembered, from the leather jacket to the SUV and the military emblem. A few hours later, he called me back, his voice low and uneasy. "Eli," he said, "I think you've stumbled onto something you don't want to be part of." The guy's name is probably Nathaniel Harker. He used to work for a private defense contractor that doesn't officially exist. Word is, he left years ago but kept contacts. You don't mess with people like him. My stomach turned. So why is my wife with him? Why are they watching me? Honestly, he said, if your face is in their files, it's either because you're a problem or you're being used. I sat there, staring at the floor, trying to process it. A problem? Used for what? The words echoed in my head. I realized then that I couldn't just wait for another night to follow her again. If I wanted answers, I had to dig deeper, even if it broke me. That evening, while Marin was busy in the kitchen, I slipped into her laptop again. I scoured her email folders until I found something I hadn't seen before. A hidden archive folder with dozens of messages between her and someone named R. I opened one at random, and my hands started shaking again as I read. Everything is going according to plan. Keep him calm. He can't know until the final step. Keep him calm. He can't know. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. They were talking about me. Marin was playing me like some pawn, keeping me in the dark while something final was about to happen. I wanted to confront her right there, scream, demand the truth, but I stopped myself. If she was lying to me this well, then whatever was coming, I needed to be 2 steps ahead of her. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early, but my mind was wide awake, plotting my next move. I was done being the clueless husband. I was going to find out what Marin and her mysterious friends were planning, and I didn't care if the truth shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. I spent the next day walking around like a ghost, trying to piece together the puzzle with the scattered clues I had. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except that ominous line, "Keep him calm. He can't know until the final step." The words rattled in my head like a ticking clock. Something was building up to this final step, and I was running out of time to figure it out. By the evening, my nerves were shot. I knew Marin was planning to leave again, and I was determined to follow her. Only this time, I wasn't just going to watch. I was going to confront them all. When she started getting ready, I slipped outside and waited in my car. I followed them again. Same SUV, same man. But this time they didn't drive to the warehouse or the creepy house. They went to the outskirts of the city, to what looked like a converted event hall. Dozens of cars were parked there, and for a moment, I froze. This wasn't some shady meeting. It looked like a gathering. I parked far enough away to remain unseen, but close enough to sneak in through a side door. My heart was racing so hard I could barely hear my own footsteps. When I finally pushed through a back entrance, what I saw inside stopped me cold. The long table was there again, yes, but this time it wasn't covered with cash or photographs. It was covered with candles, flowers, and decorations. People were standing around, smiling, talking softly. And there, at the center of the room, was a large banner that read, "Happy Anniversary, Eli." I stood frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. Marin turned, spotted me, and her face broke into a wide smile. Relief, joy, and just a hint of guilt. She hurried over, grabbing my hands. "You weren't supposed to find out this way," she said, laughing nervously. "You've been acting so stressed lately, and I wanted to do something unforgettable for our anniversary. So I asked Nathaniel, my cousin, by the way, to help me plan something big. But I guess I overdid the secrecy." I blinked, still trying to comprehend. Wait, cousin? Anniversary? Then what about the photo of me? And all those messages? She looked at me with a mix of amusement and exasperation. "Eli, the photo was for the custom slideshow they're making for tonight. And the messages? They were just planning notes. I didn't want you to know because I wanted it to be a surprise. You've been working so hard, and I thought you deserved something special." I stood there like an idiot while everyone around us started clapping and cheering. Nathaniel walked over, grinning. "Man, you look like you just saw a ghost. We thought we'd surprise you with a huge anniversary celebration. Your friends, family, everyone who matters." but I guess we went a little too mysterious. It took me a few minutes to let the tension in my body dissolve. All that paranoia, all those sleepless nights, and it turned out my wife wasn't betraying me at all. She was trying to give me something incredible. I felt like a fool, but also like the luckiest man alive. That night, surrounded by people I loved, I realized how close I'd come to ruining everything with my own fear and assumptions. When I finally got a moment alone with Marin, I held her close and whispered, "I thought I was losing you." She smiled softly and kissed my forehead. "You could never lose me, Eli. You just need to trust me once in a while." And for the first time in weeks, I believed her.